The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Empire was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. It floated at the center of the Orion Arm, a massive station that could hold entire cities inside its walls. Today, representatives from over 4,000 species filled its seats. They came from every corner of the galaxy. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had no bodies at all and existed only as light. But they all shared one thing. They all served the Empire. At the center of the chamber stood a platform made of black crystal. On this platform sat the Supreme Archon. He was a terrifying creature. His body was like a giant insect, covered in armor that was harder than steel. His eyes, all 6 of them, glowed with a cold blue light. He had ruled the Empire for 300 years. In that time, he had crushed 17 civilizations that dared to stand against him. Entire species had been erased from existence at his command. Today, he would announce the destruction of another. The chamber fell silent as the Archon rose from his throne. His voice boomed through the hall, amplified by ancient technology. "Representatives of the Empire," he began, "we gather today to address a matter of discipline. A small species on the edge of our territory has forgotten its place. They call themselves humanity." Whispers spread through the chamber. Most species here had barely heard of humans. They were newcomers to the stars. They had only been traveling through space for 200 years. In a galaxy where some civilizations were millions of years old, humans were like children who had just learned to walk. "These humans," the Archon continued, "have refused our generous offer of protection. They have rejected tributary status. They have claimed that their outer colonies belong to them and them alone." He let out a sound that might have been a laugh. "They have chosen pride over survival." The Archon raised one of his 4 arms. "Therefore, by my authority as Supreme Archon, I declare war upon the species known as humanity. Our fleets will burn their colonies. Our armies will take their worlds. And there, the planet they call Earth will become a monument to the price of defiance." The chamber erupted in sounds of approval. Thousands of aliens cheered, clicked, howled, and flashed colors of agreement. The Empire's military was the most powerful force in the galaxy. They had millions of warships. They had weapons that could crack planets in half. Against them, humanity had nothing. A few thousand ships at most. No powerful allies. No ancient technology. They were doomed, and everyone in the chamber knew it. But then someone noticed the human Envoy. She sat in the far corner of the chamber, in a small section reserved for non-member species. She was a middle-aged woman with dark hair that was turning gray at the edges. Her name was Doctor, and she was humanity's only representative in this place. She wore a simple dark coat and sat with her hands folded in her lap. She was smiling. The aliens near her began to point and whisper. The whispers spread like fire through the chamber. Soon, thousands of eyes were looking at the human woman who sat smiling while her species was sentenced to death. The Archon noticed the disturbance. His blue eyes turned toward the human section. When he saw the smile on Doctor's face, his body went still. "Human," he said, his voice cutting through the noise, "do you find something amusing?" Doctor stood slowly. She was small compared to most beings in the chamber. She had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons of any kind. Yet she stood straight and looked directly at the most powerful being in the galaxy. And then she laughed. It was not a nervous laugh. It was not the laugh of someone who had lost their mind. It was a genuine laugh, full of real amusement. It was the laugh of someone who knew a joke that no one else understood. The chamber went completely silent. No one had ever laughed at the Archon. No one had ever dared. The Archon's eyes burned brighter. "Explain yourself, human. What madness has taken hold of you?" Doctor's laugh faded into a calm smile. She looked around the chamber at the thousands of faces staring at her. Some looked confused. Some looked angry. Some looked at her with pity, thinking she had simply gone insane from fear. "Forgive me, your supremacy," she said. Her voice was clear and steady. "I am not laughing at you. I am laughing at this situation, at this moment. I have been waiting for it for a very long time. Waiting, the Archon leaned forward, waiting for your own destruction. No, Doctor said, waiting for you to make the biggest mistake in the history of your empire. Silence hung in the air like a heavy cloud. The Archon stared at the small human woman. Around the chamber, aliens exchanged glances of confusion. The ambassador, a creature made of living metal, let out a sharp sound. "This is the delusion of vermin," he said. "She has lost her mind. Ignore her and let us proceed with the war plans." But the Archon raised a hand for silence. Despite his anger, he was curious. In 300 years, no one had ever responded to a declaration of war like this. Fear, yes. Anger, yes. Desperate pleas for mercy many times, but never calm amusement. "Speak human," the Archon commanded. "Explain this mistake you believe I have made. Entertain us before your species dies." Doctor nodded slowly. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small device. Guards around the chamber raised their weapons, but she held up her other hand. "Relax," she said. "It is only a display projector. I wish to show you something." The Archon waved his hand and the guards lowered their weapons. "Show us then. Show us what gives a doomed species such confidence." Doctor activated the device. A holographic display appeared in the air above her, large enough for the entire chamber to see. It showed a simple image, a blue and green planet floating in space. Earth. "This is my home," she said. "It is small. It is fragile. It is very, very far from the center of your empire. For 80 years you have ignored us. You looked at our little planet and our little ships and decided we were not worth your attention." She looked directly at the Archon. "That was your first mistake." The Archon made a dismissive sound. "We did not ignore you out of carelessness. We ignored you because you are nothing. Your technology is primitive. Your military is weak. You have nothing that could threaten us." "That," Doctor said softly, "is your second mistake." She pressed a button on her device, and the image changed. It now showed a star map of the galaxy, with the Empire's territory marked in red. It covered almost half of the known galaxy. "You see your empire," she said, "and you see power. You see millions of ships and thousands of conquered worlds. You see a force that has never been defeated." She paused. "But you have never fought humans before." The Archon laughed, a harsh and terrible sound. "And what makes humans so special? You are soft. You are short-lived. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. You are one of the weakest species we have ever encountered." Doctor smiled again, that same calm, knowing smile. "You are right," she said. "We are soft. We are short-lived. We have no claws or fangs or armor." She looked around the chamber at all the powerful aliens watching her. "But we have something else. Something you never bothered to look for. Something that has been growing in the darkness for 80 years while you ignored us." She straightened her coat and took a deep breath. "Your supremacy. You have just declared war on the human race. Please, let me explain to you why that is the last mistake this empire will ever make." The chamber was completely silent. 4,000 species watched the small human woman standing alone against the might of the galaxy. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, something was waiting. 80 years before the declaration of war, a small human ship called the Wanderer was exploring the edge of the solar system. It was a simple vessel, built for science, not for battle. The crew of 12 had spent 2 years studying the outer planets. They were not prepared for what they found. The alien ship appeared without warning. It was massive, the size of a small moon, and it hung in space like a dark cloud. The Wanderer's captain, a woman named Sarah, ordered her crew to remain calm. They sent out greetings in every language they knew: mathematics, music, simple pictures. The aliens responded by surrounding the tiny human ship and dragging it inside the massive vessel. For 3 days, the crew of the Wanderer were studied like laboratory animals. The aliens, a species called the, poked and scanned and tested them. They found the humans to be unremarkable, soft bodies, limited senses, short, no telepathy, no natural weapons, no interesting abilities at all. They were servants of the Galactic Empire. They reported their findings to their masters. A new species had been discovered, but it was nothing special. The humans were classified as a level 2 civilization, meaning they had just barely learned to travel between stars. They were not considered a threat. They were not considered useful. They were nothing. The Empire sent a message to Earth. It was simple and clear. Humanity was now aware of the wider galaxy. They could continue to exist in their small corner of space, but they must not expand beyond certain borders. They would not be given any technology. They would not be invited to join the Empire. They would be watched, and if they caused any trouble, they would be destroyed. The leaders of Earth received this message and understood its meaning perfectly. They were being told to sit down, be quiet, and be grateful they were allowed to live. In public, Earth's governments accepted these terms. They thanked the Empire for its mercy. They promised to stay within their borders. They acted like obedient children who knew their place. In private, they began to plan. Now, 80 years later, Doctor stood in the Grand Chamber and looked at the Supreme Archon. She remembered the stories her grandfather had told her when she was young. He had been one of the first planners, one of the humans who had looked at the Empire's message and seen it for what it truly was, a death sentence with a delay. "Your Supremacy," she said calmly, "may I share some history with this chamber?" The Archon waved his hand impatiently. "If you wish to waste your final moments with stories, go ahead." Doctor nodded. 80 years ago, your empire discovered humanity. Your scientists studied us and decided we were worthless. Weak bodies, primitive technology, no special abilities. You gave us a small piece of space and told us to stay there. You thought you were being generous. She paused and looked around the chamber. But you made an error. You assumed that because we were weak, we were also stupid. The ambassador let out an annoyed hiss. "Get to the point, human. We do not have time for your wounded pride." Doctor ignored him. When your message arrived on Earth, our leaders had a choice. They could accept their fate and hope the Empire would leave them alone forever, or they could prepare for the day when the Empire decided humans were no longer worth tolerating. She smiled slightly. They chose to prepare. The Archon leaned back on his throne. "Prepare? With what? You had nothing. You still have nothing. Our intelligence reports show your military clearly. A few thousand ships. No advanced technology. You cannot even travel faster than light without using the slow methods your primitive scientists invented." "Yes," Doctor said. "That is what your intelligence reports show." Something in her voice made the Archon pause. He studied the human woman more carefully. She was still smiling, still calm, still completely unafraid. "Explain," he commanded. Doctor pressed a button on her device. The holographic display changed to show a list of numbers and statistics. "These are the official records of humanity's military. You are correct. We have 4,217 registered warships. We have 46 colonies spread across 31 star systems. Our fastest ships can travel at roughly 1/10 the speed of your slowest vessels." She let the numbers hang in the air for a moment. "These records are completely accurate," she continued. "Every ship is real. Every colony is real. Every piece of technology matches exactly what your spies have reported." The Archon made a sound of satisfaction. "Then you admit your weakness." "I admit," Doctor said carefully, "that these are our official records, the records we allowed your spies to find, the records we wanted you to see." The chamber grew quiet. The aliens were beginning to understand that something was wrong, though they did not yet know what. "You see," Doctor continued, 80 years ago our leaders made a decision. They knew that someday the Empire would come for us. Maybe in 100 years, maybe in 1,000. But eventually, the Empire would decide that humans were taking up space that could be used for something more valuable. When that day came, we needed to be ready. She changed the display again. Now it showed an organizational chart with the words Project Prometheus at the top. We created a secret program. We told no one outside of a small group, not our own people, not our allies, no one. We knew that the Empire had spies everywhere, so we built a wall around our secret and guarded it with our lives. The Archon's eyes narrowed. What kind of secret? The secret of who we really are, Doctor said. Your Empire looked at humanity and saw what we wanted you to see: weak, primitive, harmless, a species barely worth noticing. You were so certain of your own superiority that you never thought to look deeper. She turned to face the thousands of aliens watching her. Let me ask you all a question. In 80 years, humanity never once asked for technology from any Empire species. We never requested aid. We never tried to join your alliances or trade agreements. We stayed alone in our little corner of space and kept to ourselves. The ambassador spoke again. Because you had nothing to offer, no one wanted to deal with primitives. That is what you believed, Doctor agreed. But did anyone ever wonder if there might be another reason? Did anyone ask themselves why a young species, surrounded by advanced civilizations, would refuse all help and all contact? Silence. We refused, Doctor said, because we did not want your technology. We did not want your alliances. We wanted only one thing from the galaxy. She paused. Time. The word hung in the air. We needed time to prepare, time to build, time to grow strong in secret while you looked the other way, and you gave us 80 years of it, 80 years of being ignored, 80 years of being dismissed, 80 years of being called primitive and worthless. She looked directly at the Archon. Her smile was gone now, replaced by something harder, something colder. Those 80 years are over now, your supremacy. You have just declared war on humanity. And now, finally, I can show you what we have been doing in the darkness while you were not watching. The Archon rose from his throne. For the first time, there was something other than arrogance in his eyes. It might have been curiosity. It might have been the first tiny seed of doubt. Show us then, he said. Show us this great secret of yours. Doctor nodded with pleasure. She pressed another button on her device. I suggest, she said quietly, that you contact your border stations, all of them, right now. And across the galaxy, in the cold darkness between stars, lights began to appear. The Archon stared at the human woman for a long moment. Then he turned to his military advisor, a massive creature covered in thick armor plates. Contact the border stations, he ordered, all of them now. The advisor touched a panel built into his armor. Across the chamber, other military officials did the same. Thousands of messages flew out into space at faster-than-light speeds, reaching the edges of Empire territory in seconds. While they waited for responses, Doctor continued speaking. Let me tell you about Project Prometheus, she said. It was named after a figure from human mythology. Prometheus was a god who stole fire from the heavens and gave it to humanity. He was punished for this, but his gift allowed humans to survive and grow strong. She changed the holographic display. Now it showed a diagram of the galaxy with thousands of small dots scattered across it. For 80 years, while your empire watched our official colonies, we were busy elsewhere. We sent ships into the dark places of the galaxy, dead systems with no living planets, rogue planets drifting between stars, asteroid fields far from any trade routes, places no one would ever think to look. The dots on the display began to glow. We built 2,400 hidden installations, Doctor said. Factories, shipyards, research stations, training facilities, all of them completely invisible to your sensors, all of them working day and night for 8 decades. The Archon's advisor suddenly made a choking sound. He was staring at his communication panel with all four of his eyes wide open. "Supreme One," he said, his voice shaking. "The border stations are reporting. They are reporting unknown contacts." "Unknown contacts," the Archon turned. "What kind of contacts?" "Ships, Supreme One. Human ships. Thousands of them. They appeared out of nowhere at 300 different locations across our territory." The chamber exploded into noise. Aliens shouted and screamed and made sounds of panic. The idea that humans could have thousands of secret ships was impossible. The idea that those ships could appear inside Empire territory without warning was even more impossible. Doctor waited calmly for the noise to die down. "I told you," she said, "that your intelligence reports only showed what we wanted you to see. You saw 4,000 ships. The real number is closer to 40,000. The Archon's eyes burned with fury. "Lies. Even if you had hidden shipyards, you could not have built that many vessels. You do not have the resources. You do not have the population." "You are correct that we do not have a large population," Doctor agreed. "But we have something better. We have automation. While your empire uses living workers to build ships, we use machines that work without rest. One hidden factory can produce more ships in a year than your largest shipyard." She changed the display again. Now it showed technical diagrams of human ships. They looked nothing like the vessels in the Empire's records. These were sleek and dangerous, covered in weapons and armor. "Your second mistake," Doctor continued, "was assuming that our technology was primitive because we never used yours. The truth is the opposite. We refused your technology because we were developing our own, and we did not want you to see it." The Archon leaned forward. "What technology?" Doctor smiled. "Your empire uses something called hyperspace drives. They bend space to allow faster-than-light travel. It is good technology, very fast, very reliable, also very easy to detect. Every time a ship enters or leaves hyperspace, it creates a signal that can be tracked across the galaxy." She pointed at the diagrams on her display. "Our ships do not use hyperspace. 15 years ago, our scientists discovered a completely different method of travel. We call it dimensional folding. Instead of bending space, we step outside of it entirely and reappear somewhere else. There is no signal, no warning, no way to detect us until we are already there." The implications of this hit the chamber like a physical blow. An enemy that could appear anywhere without warning was an enemy that could not be defended against. Fleets were useless if you never knew where the attack would come from. "That is how your ships appeared at our borders," the Archon said slowly. "They simply appeared." "Yes," Doctor said, "and they can disappear just as easily. Your weapons cannot hit what they cannot find." The Archon's advisor was receiving more reports. His face, if you could call it a face, grew paler with each message. "Supreme One," he said, "the human ships are not attacking, they are just sitting there watching." "They are waiting," Doctor explained. "They will not fire unless I give the order. You see, Your Supremacy, I did not come here to witness the destruction of my people. I came here to give you a choice." The Archon let out a harsh laugh, though it sounded forced now. "A choice? You think 40,000 ships can threaten an empire with millions?" "No," Doctor said. "I know they cannot. That is why the ships are not our main weapon." The chamber grew quiet again. The aliens were beginning to realize that the human woman had more secrets to reveal. "Your empire is powerful," Doctor said, "but it is also complicated. You have millions of ships, yes, but those ships need fuel. They need ammunition. They need repairs. They need food for their crews. All of these things come from supply lines that stretch across the galaxy." She changed the display. Now it showed a map of the Empire's supply routes, thousands of lines connecting thousands of worlds. "For 60 years, human agents have been living inside your empire. They came as refugees, as workers, as merchants, as servants. Your people never noticed them because you never paid attention to humans. We were too primitive, too weak, not worth watching." She let that sink in for a moment. Those agents have been very busy. They have placed devices on every major supply station, every communication relay, every shipyard and fuel depot. She looked at the Archon. "One signal from me and your entire logistics network dies. Your fleets will run out of fuel within weeks. Your armies will run out of ammunition within days. Your war machine will simply stop working." The Archon was silent. Around him, his advisors were checking their data, trying to find evidence of what the human was claiming. They found nothing, which was somehow even more frightening than finding something. "You are bluffing," the Archon said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "Am I?" Doctor pressed another button. Right now, at a small refueling station in the system, one of those devices is activating, not destroying anything, just shutting down the power. Your people there will experience a brief blackout, nothing dangerous. Consider it a demonstration." The Archon's advisor checked his panel. A moment later, he looked up with horror in his eyes. "The station has gone dark, Supreme One. They are reporting a complete power failure of unknown cause." The chamber was now completely silent. Every alien in the room was staring at the small human woman who had just shown them how fragile their great empire truly was. Doctor straightened her coat. "That was one device," she said quietly. "There are over 8,000 more. Do you still think I am bluffing?" The Archon sat back on his throne. For the first time in 300 years, he did not know what to say. "What do you want?" he finally asked. Doctor smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I want you to understand something, your supremacy. I want you to understand that you are not in control anymore. You thought you were declaring war on sheep. You did not realize that we were wolves waiting in the darkness." She looked around the chamber at all the watching aliens. "But the ships and the devices are not even the worst part. There is one more thing you need to know. One more secret that has been growing in the shadows for 40 years. The Archon's voice was barely a whisper. "What secret?" Doctor turned back to face him. "The secret of who else has been waiting for this moment. The secret of how many others are ready to rise up against you." She changed the display one final time. Now it showed a list of names, species names, 17 of them. "You thought you were fighting humans alone," she said. "You were wrong." The list of names glowed in the air above Doctor. 17 species. 17 names that every alien in the chamber recognized. The pale ones of and 12 others. These were not powerful species. They were tributary species. Conquered peoples who had been forced to serve the Empire for thousands of years. They worked in the mines. They served on the ships. They cleaned the floors and grew the food and did all the jobs that the Empire's ruling species considered beneath them. The Archon stared at the list. "These are our servants," he said. "They have no power, they have no weapons. They exist only because we allow them to exist." "Yes," Doctor agreed. "That is what you believe. And 40 years ago, we began to wonder if they believed it too." She changed the display to show a star system far from Empire territory. A small planet orbited a dim red star. "This is where we made first contact with the Resistance," she said. They had been fighting the Empire in secret for centuries. Small acts of sabotage, hidden communities on forgotten worlds. Nothing that could truly threaten you, but enough to keep hope alive. She looked at the Archon with something like pity. "Did you know that they have a prophecy? It says that one day, strangers from beyond the stars will come to help them break their chains. When they met us, they thought their prophecy had come true." The ambassador jumped to his feet. "This is treason. The tributary species are property of the Empire. They would never dare to rebel." "They would never dare to rebel alone," Doctor corrected him. "But they are not alone anymore. For 40 years, human agents have been meeting with resistance groups from 17 different species. We have given them hope. We have given them training. We have given them weapons hidden in places your soldiers never thought to look." She let the words hang in the air. Right now, at this very moment, over 2 billion beings across the empire are waiting for a signal. Workers in your factories, servants in your homes, soldiers in your own armies who secretly belong to conquered peoples. When that signal comes, they will rise up together. The chamber exploded into chaos. Aliens were screaming, arguing, demanding that the Archon do something. Military officers were shouting into their communicators, trying to verify the humans' claims. The Archon raised his hand for silence. It took a long time for the noise to die down. "You are asking me to believe," he said slowly, "that 17 conquered species have been planning a rebellion for 40 years, and we knew nothing about it." "I am not asking you to believe anything," Doctor said. "I am telling you facts. Whether you believe them or not does not change reality." She pulled up more information on her display. Reports, messages, evidence of meetings and plans and preparations that had happened right under the Empire's nose. "Your intelligence services are very good at watching for threats from outside the Empire," she continued. "But they never thought to watch for threats from inside. Why would they? The tributary species are weak. They are controlled. They would never dare to challenge their masters." She shook her head. "That was your greatest mistake. Not the ships, not the technology. The greatest mistake was forgetting that even the weakest creature will fight when it has nothing left to lose." The Archon was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was cold. "Even if everything you say is true, it does not matter. The Empire's military is vast beyond counting. We can crush any rebellion. We can hunt down your hidden ships. We can find and destroy your devices. It will cost us much, but we will survive. And then we will burn your Earth to ash." Doctor nodded slowly. "I expected you to say that. You are correct, of course. The Empire is very powerful. Even with everything I have revealed, there is a chance you could win. It would take years. It would cost you billions of lives. But yes, you might survive." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small object. It was a simple device, no larger than her thumb. A single red button glowed on its surface. "That is why we prepared one final option," she said. "We call it the dead man's switch." The Archon's eyes fixed on the small device. "What is that?" "This device is connected to weapons platforms hidden in deep space, 23 of them to be exact. Each platform contains weapons capable of destroying a planet." Doctor's voice was completely calm. "Those platforms are currently aimed at 12 of your most important worlds, including your throne world, including this station." The chamber went absolutely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. No one even seemed to breathe. "If humanity falls," Doctor continued, "if Earth is destroyed, if I die without sending a specific code every 30 days, those weapons will fire automatically. There is no way to stop them. There is no way to find them. They exist outside normal space, invisible to every sensor you possess." She held up the small device. "This is not a negotiation tool. This is not a threat. This is a promise. If you destroy humanity, the Empire dies with us. Maybe not all of it, but enough that you will never recover. Enough that every other species in the galaxy will know that the great Empire can bleed." The Archon stared at her. His body was completely still. His eyes burned with fury and something else, something that looked almost like respect. "You would destroy yourselves," he said. "You would commit suicide just to hurt us." "We would rather live," Doctor admitted. "We would rather find a peaceful solution. But yes, if you force us into a corner, we will make sure that corner becomes your grave as well as ours." She smiled grimly. "Humans have a saying, if you cannot win, make sure your enemy cannot enjoy their victory. We learned long ago that the threat of mutual destruction is the only thing that truly powerful beings respect." The Archon's advisor spoke up, his voice trembling. Supreme One, if she is telling the truth about the weapons platforms, we cannot find them. Our sensors show nothing. But that does not mean they are not there. The dimensional folding technology she described could hide anything. They are there, Doctor said simply. I will not prove it to you because I do not need to prove it. You can gamble that I am bluffing. You can roll the dice with the survival of your empire. But I think you know that humans do not make empty threats. She looked around the chamber one final time, at all the powerful aliens who had come to celebrate the destruction of a weak, primitive species. Now they sat in silence, realizing that they had never truly understood what they were facing. You saw sheep, Doctor said softly. You saw a small, weak species hiding in a corner of the galaxy. You never noticed that we were wolves in a holding pattern, waiting, planning, preparing for this exact moment. She turned back to the Archon. So now you have a choice, your supremacy. You can continue with your war. You can send your fleets against our ships. You can try to find our devices and our weapons platforms. You can fight your way through rebellions on 1,000 worlds. And at the end, even if you win, you will rule over ashes. She paused. Or you can listen to what I am about to propose. You can accept that the old ways are over, and together we can build something better than this empire has ever been. The Archon sat on his throne, surrounded by his advisors and his generals and the representatives of 4,000 species. He had crushed 17 civilizations. He had ruled for 300 years. He had never felt fear in his entire life. Until now. Speak, he said quietly. Tell me your proposal. Doctor allowed herself a small smile. I thought you might say that. 6 hours had passed since the declaration of war. In that time, the Grand Chamber had transformed from a place of celebration to a place of negotiation. The Archon's advisors had everything they could. The human ships were real. The power failure at station was real. The tributary species were showing signs of organized activity that had somehow been missed for decades. Doctor sat at a table across from the Supreme Archon. Around them, representatives from across the galaxy watched in silence. History was being made, and everyone knew it. Let me be clear about what I am proposing, Doctor said. I am not asking for the surrender of the Empire. I am not demanding that you bow before humanity. We have no interest in ruling the galaxy. We never did. The Archon studied her carefully. Then what do you want? Change, she said simply. Real change. Not the kind that comes from conquest, but the kind that comes from understanding that the old way cannot continue. She activated her display one more time. It showed a simple document with several points listed. First, the tributary species must be freed. All of them. No more forced labor. No more second-class citizenship. They become full members of the galactic community with the same rights as any other species. The Archon shifted uncomfortably. Those species have served the Empire for thousands of years. Their service is essential to our economy. Then your economy must change, Doctor said. Pay them fair wages. Treat them as equals. You will find that free workers are more productive than slaves. Humans learned this lesson long ago. It cost us much suffering to learn it, but we did learn. She continued to the next point. Second, the Empire must transform into a commonwealth. The Archon's position will become ceremonial. Real power will rest with a council where every member species has an equal voice. Decisions will be made together, not imposed from above. The Archon's eyes narrowed. You are asking me to give up my power. I am asking you to share your power, Doctor corrected. You can still be respected. You can still be honored, but you will no longer be a tyrant. The days of one species ruling over all others must end. She moved to the third point. Third, humanity will become a founding member of this new commonwealth. We will share our technology freely with any species that wishes to learn. In return, we expect to be treated as partners, not as primitives to be ignored or conquered. The Archon was quiet for a long moment. Around the chamber, aliens whispered among themselves. What the human was proposing was revolutionary. It would completely reshape the galaxy. "And if I refuse?" the Archon asked. Doctor met his gaze without blinking. "Then the war begins. Our ships will strike your supply lines. Your tributary species will rise up. Your empire will tear itself apart from the inside while we attack from the outside. And if we begin to lose, the dead man's switch activates. Your throne world dies. This station dies. 12 more worlds die. And whatever is left of your empire will spend the next 1,000 years trying to recover." She leaned forward slightly. "I do not want that. You do not want that. Nobody in this chamber wants that. But I need you to understand that we are prepared for it. We have been preparing for 80 years. If you choose war, you will not be fighting primitives. You will be fighting wolves who have nothing left to lose." The Archon sat back in his throne. For a long time he did not speak. His advisors watched him nervously. The entire chamber waited. Finally, he let out a long, tired breath. It was a sound that no one in the galaxy had ever heard him make before. It was the sound of someone accepting defeat. "You have won, human," he said quietly. "I do not know how you did it. I do not understand how a species so young could plan so far ahead, but you have outplayed me. You have outplayed the entire empire." He stood slowly. "I accept your terms. The tributary species will be freed. The empire will become a commonwealth, and humanity will take its place among the stars as an equal partner." Doctor allowed herself to feel a moment of relief. It was over. 80 years of planning, sacrifice, and secrecy had led to this moment, and they had succeeded. "Thank you, Your Supremacy," she said. "You have made a wise choice. The galaxy will remember this day as the beginning of a new era." The Archon looked at her with his 6 blue eyes. "I have one question for you, human. One thing I need to understand." "Ask." "How did you keep it secret?" he said. "For 80 years, your entire species worked toward this plan. Millions of people must have known. How did no one ever reveal the truth?" Doctor was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "Because we all understood what was at stake," she said. "Every human, from the youngest child to the oldest elder, knew that we were fighting for survival. We kept the secret not because we were ordered to, but because we chose to. Because we loved our families and our homes and our future. Because we refused to let our children grow up as slaves." She looked around the chamber at all the watching aliens. "Humans are not special because we are strong or smart or powerful. We are special because we never give up. When we believe in something, truly believe, we will sacrifice everything to protect it. That is the one thing the Empire never understood about us. That is why you lost." The Archon nodded slowly. For a moment, something like respect flickered in his ancient eyes. "Perhaps," he said, "we underestimated you more than we knew." 1 year later. The galaxy had changed. The old empire was gone, replaced by the Commonwealth of Free Species. Representatives from thousands of worlds met regularly to discuss issues and make decisions together. It was messy. It was complicated. There were arguments and disagreements and problems that took months to solve. But there were no more slaves, no more conquered peoples, no more species treated as worthless because they were weak or young or different. On Earth, in a simple office overlooking the Pacific Ocean, sat at her desk. She was no longer just an envoy. She was now Secretary General of the Human Coalition, the highest position in humanity's government. But despite her title, her office was modest. She had never cared much for luxury. On her desk was a photograph in a silver frame. It showed an old man with white hair and kind eyes, her grandfather. He had been one of the original architects of Project Prometheus, back when it was just an impossible dream shared by a handful of people. He had died 30 years ago, never seeing the fruits of his labor. Picked up the photograph and looked at it for a long moment. "We did it, abuelo," she whispered. We played the long game just like you taught us, and we won." She remembered sitting on his knee as a child, listening to his stories about the day the aliens came, about how the Empire had looked at humanity and seen nothing worth fearing, about how he and others had decided that being underestimated was not a curse but a gift. "They will ignore us," he had told her. "They will dismiss us. And while they are looking the other way, we will become something they never expected. We will become the ones who change everything." A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She put the photograph down and called, "Come in." The door opened and a young woman entered. She was not human. Her skin was pale blue and delicate antennae rose from her forehead. She was one of the species that had been enslaved for thousands of years before the revolution. Her name was, and she was Now's closest advisor and friend. "The council is ready for you, Madame Secretary," said with a warm smile. "The representatives from the outer systems have arrived. They are very excited to discuss the new trade agreements." Stood and straightened her coat. It was the same coat she had worn in the Grand Chamber a year ago. She kept it as a reminder of what humans had achieved and what they must continue to protect. "How are the former tributary species adjusting?" she asked as they walked toward the door. "Better every day," said. "My people are building schools for the first time in 3,000 years. Children are learning to read. Adults are learning skills they never had the chance to develop. It is difficult, but there is hope, real hope." Nodded. "That is all we ever wanted, the chance to build something better." They walked together through the halls of the Coalition building. Outside the windows, the sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. It was a beautiful sight, one that humans had been watching for thousands of years. But now, when they looked at the sky, they saw more than just their own sun. They saw the stars. They saw the galaxy. They saw a future that belonged to all species, not just the powerful few. Said as they approached the council chamber, "Do you remember what I said in the Grand Chamber, about humans being wolves?" "I remember," said. "It was quite frightening, actually." Smiled. "I want you to know something. We never wanted to be wolves. We never wanted to be predators hiding in the darkness. We only became that because we had no other choice." She stopped at the door to the chamber and turned to face her friend. "Now that the war is over, we can finally become what we were always meant to be. Not wolves, not sheep, just people. People trying to build a better future, one day at a time." Reached out and touched his hand gently. "That is why the galaxy trusts you," she said. "That is why the former slaves believe in humanity. Not because you are powerful, but because you use your power to help others." Squeezed her hand in return. "Thank you, now come on, we have a future to build." She pushed open the door and walked into the chamber. Representatives from 100 different species rose to greet her. Human, alien, former master, former slave, all of them working together. Behind her, the sun finished setting and the stars came out. Billions of stars in a galaxy that was finally, truly free. And somewhere in the quiet halls of memory, an old man with kind eyes smiled. The long game was over. A new game had begun.